So I just started recording, and let me share the PowerPoint. Okay, so now and later, can you guys see it all right?
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. So making goal setting a little bit sweeter. So what is a goal? Oh, hi, Stephanie. So a goal is obviously something that you're working towards to achieve. Sometimes these goals have obstacles that can make it a little bit harder to get to, but they're still goals nonetheless. And these goals are, sometimes easier to achieve and sometimes a little bit harder. It just depends on what kind of goal it is, when you're making it, and sometimes even just what the goal means to you will change the intensity of how easy or how hard it might be. Goals are always fulfilled through work. So a lot of times, or I think even most of the time, you're not going to achieve a goal just by standing in line somewhere. You're going to have to work for it. And so I'm wondering, what are some goals that you've made recently?
That's me.
Yeah, that's you.
Okay,
Or
so
Casey. Casey could say it too, or I can. So
I made a goal of mine because I'm a big procrastinator. Not a but like I definitely am one of those like I work well under pressure or like so a goal of mine was to I have a couple big term papers this semester, as you know, Emily, and my goal was to create like some kind of like spreadsheet for myself or like a schedule so that I don't procrastinate. My goal is to not procrastinate this semester and stress myself out towards the end.
yeah, that makes sense. And then that, as we'll see later, is a goal that, getting your stuff done by the end of it, like ahead of time before the semester is coming to a close, would count as like a SMART goal that we would talk about later because it is measurable and it is something that's important to you. So we'll keep going. So what are some types of goals? So we have basically two big types of goals, the short-term goals and long-term. As we'll talk later, these different goals have different maybe subcategories within them or different techniques that you can use to achieve them. They're very personalized. Obviously, I'm not going to have the same short-term or long-term goals that anybody else may have. They might have similar themes, but just along the road, you'll have different things that you'll do to get there. Alrighty. So short-term goals. So we'll focus on that first. The short-term goals encompass daily, monthly, and year-long goals. So that's what I'm talking about with the fact that these goals have different subcategories. And even though it's a short-term goal, they can be year-long goals. And short-term is different than long-term in the sense that short-term is something that you can kind of see happening. It's kind of on the horizon, whereas long-term might be, I want to eventually get to this career, something that's maybe a few years down the line. So these short-term goals may be less transformative than long-term ones, but are just as beneficial. So you might not have, a big life change, by changing procrastination for a semester, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't, increase your GPA or increase the value in the classes that you did, or, decrease your stress, like you said. So, and there's no saying that these short-term goals can't be kind of blown up and transformed into long-term goals. You might realize like, oh, this really works for me. For the rest of my grad school career, I'm going to work towards not procrastinating and make it a long-term goal that I'll check in with myself, multiple times a month or a couple times a year. So now, and anybody, including me, can always answer these questions. What are some examples of short-term goals that you may set? And at least for me, a short-term goal right now, kind of during the coronavirus, is just trying to give myself space to, kind of relax. And that might seem a little bit vague at times. So I try to make it kind of a list type idea of, okay, what are some of the things that make me relax? Maybe it's watching one 30-minute long television show while I study, to take that little bit of a break, or making sure that I'm, doing self-care, like, I mean, it sounds funny, but showering every day or having a good meal, like those are things that, especially during this time, can kind of slip through your fingers, but make a really big impact. So I'm wondering what other short-term goals we all have.
I wanted to add something. I like the fact that Emily had said May for the little green bubble, because like she said, it can, like, a short-term goal can transfer into a long-term goal and like have just as many benefits. And I found that I kind of balance both, like having short and long-term for depending on what the situation is. Like, for instance, like working out, I can't expect to look like Dwayne the Rock Johnson in a month, you know. You have to kind of be realistic with those goals. And I found that some of my friends can't do long-term goals. Like, they just struggle with like having that big goal in their head, so they have to break it down to small goals. So I feel like it's very important that you find which one works best for you and just stick to that. And then also like divert to the opposite one sometimes, depending on what the goal is. And then for me, I think my, just similar to Emily, like self-care, just trying to work out 3 times a week is like something that I've been trying to do since like COVID started. Because I know that sitting down, it has its pros and cons, you know. And so that's one thing that I do. And then also doing my weekly assignments for school. It's in my last year, senioritis is hitting. So I think by just making sure I complete all my weekly assignments, staying on task, I feel like that's something that I do weekly to achieve those short-term goals.
Nice. Anybody else? Or should we keep moving?
Well, I already said my short-term goal,
Oh,
but
okay.
a different, I mean, but also when you were talking about the like when you were talking about in COVID, like the short-term goal that it's like the slowing down, like being okay with slowing down, being okay with it. Because I feel like maybe it was actually a long-term goal of mine before COVID to, be okay with uncertainty and learn how to be okay with like figuring out like how I can slow down and like how to balance more. And now because of COVID, it's turned into like, oh, I have to figure this out now. This is a short-term goal. Like, what is my self-care? What is my slow down routine?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that almost shows even how, I said that you can take short-term goals and make them long-term. That kind of shows an example that it can go even the other way.
Right.
You can, and I'm sure you still have that long-term goal, of wanting to increase the ability to slow down throughout your life. But obviously right now it's kind of concentrated on this short amount of time.
Right.
So, very cool. Okay. So any questions about short-term goals? No? Perfect. All righty. So now we're moving into long-term goals. So long-term goals should be things that take several years to achieve. So that's what I was saying before, that they're not going to be daily or monthly or even year-long goals. They're going to be something that's a few years down the line, or even a lifelong goal. It doesn't even have to be a few years. It can be decades. So some tips for long-term goals. So the first tip is to pick just one long-term goal at a time and find a way to set reminders for yourself to make sure that you're kind of keeping up with that long-term goal. Because obviously, with short-term goals, it's a little bit easier, like we said, to see them on the horizon. You have a lot more motivation to keep up with them because there's kind of a deadline a lot of the time. But for long-term, that's a little bit different, and it's a little bit harder because you're kind of like, oh, I'll work on that in a couple of weeks, or maybe once I'm done with grad school or undergrad, I'll work on that. Which is perfectly fine, but sometimes it might be good to set smaller reminders throughout that time. Like for instance, if slowing down, is your long-term goal, maybe every month you can write down something that you did to add to that goal, that you did to improve it. It doesn't have to be something big, but just something that keeps it on your mind.
I really like that one.
Oh, good. So create a list of milestones to get there. At least for me with long-term goals, they almost feel like dreams sometimes. Like getting the career that I want, or having a family that I want, things that seem like stuff that I can't really control. But if you write down, a list of milestones, it kind of gives you that same kind of structure that helps. Maybe for getting a good job, you want to do well in grad school and you want to get a good internship so that you can add to your resume to help you get there. And then the last thing kind of relates back to the first one of creating daily steps to get there. And they don't have to be daily, but I think daily is good because then you can do it just on even the smallest increments of, even the daily type of step could be, just self-affirmations of I'm going to get that career that I want. I'm going to, do well in the classes. It doesn't even have to be, oh, I finished this. It can just be something that kind of helps manifest that goal that you have. So, SMART goals. I love SMART goals. They're the best. And they just make so much sense to me when I'm trying to create a goal. Sometimes I'll say like, oh, I just want to be a better person, or a nicer daughter, or, a better friend. And those are great goals to have, but they're sometimes kind of vague and easy to slip again through our fingers because there's nothing that we can hold on that's tangible of, okay, if I do this and this and this, it'll help me reach my goal. So SMART goals is obviously keeping things specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And we will go into some tips in that. So SMART tips, or SMART goal tips. I guess it could just be SMART tips too. So the first one is to replace should with will. Obviously, these words maybe don't seem like a big deal when you're saying them, but it goes with that manifestation. It goes with what you're speaking out into the universe of like, I will do it, not, I should. It helps you keep things more concrete and kind of pushes you towards that motivation even more. Changing soon to a specific time also keeps that structure, keeps you accountable. Switching need to want to. I think this is good not only when you're, trying to manifest these goals, but also when you want to see what you really want, and they say, there's a difference between things that you need and things that you want. And they're both, good categories of goals to have. But I think understanding what the different goals are, what you need to prioritize, makes things just even more clear and even more concise. And replacing quit with stop. I think this just has to do a lot with kind of like self-talk and kind of just your perspective on the goals. If you think about the idea of quitting something, that's like cold turkey, you're done with it. You kind of either pass or fail with it. If you don't quit in time, you didn't do well. If you did quit in time, you're the hero. And it's great to be the hero, but when you don't do it perfectly the first time, it kind of squashes that goal a little bit. It kind of squashes, you think, your ability to get it done, which obviously we don't want. So saying stop, I think, is a much more commonplace word, much more flexible, and like, I'm going to stop, and maybe I'll stop with these certain steps, or maybe it works better to stop in, cold turkey or just directly, but it gives you a lot more like personalization of how you want to do it and when you want to do it. And then the last one is to change never to a specific plan. This has kind of a similar idea. I think never, isn't that the Justin Bieber song of never say never? It's like you don't want to do that because it just, saying never is so absolute, and it's so just like, I'm never going to do it again. and that kind of doesn't leave room for you to kind of analyze maybe why you're doing it or what function it plays. So setting a specific plan, I think, gives you that moment to think about things and to understand them and to kind of understand yourself more when you're making these goals. And I think it's arguably that's a good part of goals, is to understand what you really want. So I know, Casey, you had some stuff to say about this.
Yes. So I personally use many of these tips in my actual life. Like being purposeful with my words is very important. Like you said, manifestation is very like, you don't want to speak down to yourself, because even though you're saying that, oh no, I can't do this, like subconsciously you're saying that you can't do it, and then that might manifest as something else. So I found that it was very transformative for my college experience when I started using these like words, like for instance, I changed soon to a specific time. Like when you say, oh, I'll see you soon, like somebody soon might be in 5 minutes, somebody soon might be 2 hours, you really don't know. So it's really good to be purposeful with your words for communication purposes. And then mind over matter is so true. Like mind over matter, like if you did a sport, for instance, like sometimes you said, I can't do it, but your body can, and then you find yourself doing what you said you couldn't do. So mind over matter is very important. So like once you like manifest that positive mindset that you can, and like changing these words, like I really have personally seen the change in my life for the better, which is really great. So it takes practice, of course, but it definitely is something to consider and like write down on the walls, like on your doors and stuff. Just see it subconsciously, because I do feel like these things do impact your overall well-being. So
Maxine, did you have something? You just unmuted, so it's fine.
No, I love this. I mean, I feel like it's just like the reframing and like the little shifts in language can even, it could just even speak to like tiny things. Like I love the should and will, because first of all, it's like it's empowering, but instead of, it turns it from like a task to a goal, like it, like even that little thing turns it from like, I have to like, it turns that have to I get to, like it maybe even makes it more pleasurable or more exciting. And I mean, I love this. I think it's so helpful to just like shift these with your goals and just with yourself, like shift these like make these little words, these little shifts, and they have big big rewards.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you say that, because when I have students come in as an academic success coach, I really value not changing their whole study method or their whole test taking strategy, because they have those for a reason and it works for them in some way, shape, or form. And so kind of making those small changes, maybe changing their environment or the words that they use when they talk about it, or even, and it sounds silly, but even the pens that they use, making it maybe a little bit more fun or adding a highlighter, just changes the whole idea of what you're doing. And that is just so powerful. And I think that's where words of affirmation really come in, because, if you think about words of affirmation, it's just, you saying sentences out loud, maybe to yourself. But if you're really processing what it does for you, it's, having the most important person, AKA you, supporting yourself. And that's, very powerful. And I think that's, similar to what these are saying.
Yeah, I think, it's like with words of affirmation, it's like, it's not like you're going to look in the mirror and say this and all of a sudden you're going to start believing it, but it's like, your inner discourse might be saying something different. So it's important to start like challenging that if you want that change. So it's like, I'm going to challenge it out loud every day and then start to believe it like somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and you probably won't even notice the change, and you might not even notice the change with these things, but they definitely make a big difference.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone over SMART goals, I'd love to hear an example of what you think a SMART goal is and one example of something that is not a SMART goal. And for me, maybe an example of a SMART goal would be that I want to drink, 75 ounces of water a day. And that's very measurable, relevant to me. It's like time based because it's 24 hours, very easy and small to get. And so by the end of the day, if I've accomplished that, I've achieved something that's really important to me, important to my health. But a very easy way for me to take that same idea and not have it qualify as a SMART goal is to just say like, oh, I'm going to hydrate more. I'm just going to drink more water now. And even though it's a similar idea, it's a lot easier to slip because you don't have a measure of it. It's not like I have to have it done by this certain time of day. So it's not even that, your goals are wrong. It's just maybe the way you're saying them is.
Right.
So do we have any examples? And it doesn't have to be both, maybe just an example of one of the two categories.
I can give one. For SMART, I could say I want to read 3 times a day, like a page at least not 3 times a day, 3 times a week. Like, and I say Monday, Wednesday, Friday to be even more specific. And then for a not SMART goal would be for me to read more. Like I want to read more, or I want to read every week. Like that may just happen for one day, like instead of 3 days, and not get the same results. So that would be my SMART and not SMART goals.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
good.
I think mine's a little kind of similar. The one that like first popped into my head because it was something that for a very long time I would say to myself was, I want to start writing again. Like I want to start writing again. I'm going to start writing again. I would even write this month, start writing again, and I think that would not qualify as a SMART goal. And I think the way to turn it into a SMART goal is to say something like, I'm going to write for 30 minutes a day, three times a week,
Yeah.
So it's like at the end of the week, I'll know, and like Casey said, like you can even say specific days, like it'll be these 3 days and I'll write for 30 minutes, even like even more so like in the morning, like something like that. So
perfect.
Measure it.
Yeah. And it really sounded like you were getting there with getting it closer to a SMART goal. So it's, something you already had anyway, because you were, whittling it down to, I just want to write this month. Like, I just want to get there. So you went very close.
Oh, thanks.
You're so welcome. So setting daily goals. I've found that daily goals are the ones that students often come in saying that these are very helpful because it keeps them accountable on a daily basis. And kind of like Maxine said, or Casey said, I'm not sure, but if you say like, I'm going to do it this week, it could very easily be for 1 hour on Thursday when really you needed to be doing something every day of the week, or at least a couple times a week. So setting these daily goals are helpful because then it's not too big of a, calendar setting. So some like ideas for setting those are to keep it short, keep 3 to 4 daily goals. I mean, I'm not saying to just do 3 to 4 things a day, but somewhere along those lines, you're going to fill that time, and having those 3 to 4 daily goals will really make sure that, not only that you're getting things done, but you'll feel like you're getting things done. And especially during this, time of the pandemic, it's very easy to go throughout a day and not feel like you did anything. And that might be fine to do a couple days a week, or for a few weeks, but it really does take a toll on your mental health, and not feeling like you're living up to maybe what you were before is really hard. So keeping those daily goals keeps that in check, keeps you accountable. And writing out the night before is also very helpful, because I know if I don't have a plan for the next day, I can easily wake up, at 10 in the morning and start my day right after lunch, at noon, and then I only have a few more hours of the day left. But if I plan it out the night before, maybe I'll make sure that I wake up earlier, and I'll know that I'm going to eat breakfast, or I'm going to wake up, and then my day is started. So that is a good tip. Allowing for time for extra work. Kind of like what I said at the beginning. You're not going to schedule the entire day, and really you shouldn't, because that decreases your likelihood of finishing any of it, really. And that actually is a good point going in with any goal. I will say, kind of like the SMART goal said, you don't want to say, from Maxine's point, that you want to finish writing a book, in 3 months. I mean, unless you're writing every second of every day, it just might not happen. And I think making that big of a goal, it almost like is so big and kind of scary that it makes it to where any writing is not going to happen, because it's just so daunting, and you're just, if you don't get something done one day, you feel guilty about it, and the next day you're just completely just taken aback by that feeling guilty, and then you waste a lot of time. So that is definitely something to keep in mind when making your goals. Use whatever tool you're most comfortable with, and you can take that tool idea as, literal of, use reading actual textbooks if that's what works for you, or reading them online if that's what works for you. But also it goes with use whatever study methods or whatever test taking strategies work for you, or any goal setting strategies that work for you. There's no need to change everything, but that doesn't mean you can't modify it. So still use those tools if you're comfortable with them. And set a distraction-free environment. So for those daily goals, it's very hard to set them, at least for me, if I have TV in the background or a podcast playing. It's just really tough. And I'd love to think that I can do it, but I just can't. So making sure you have a distraction-free environment is great for when you're, achieving those daily goals. And I know, Casey, I think you had more to say about daily goals.
Yeah, I had a tip in terms of making it realistic, and I told two of my students this already, and they found it pretty effective. So I think some of us sometimes cheat ourselves by not being realistic with our goals. So we'll say, "Oh, we're going to finish all like my two-page papers today," and you know that one of them is one that you dread. Like maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe you want to say you're going to study for 2 hours because your professor said you should study 2 hours a day for the course. But if you personally you can't stay that 2 hours and be effectively studying, then maybe you should reflect on yourself and say, is this actually like realistic? I know I can only stare at a screen for 20 minutes. So maybe I should study for 20 minutes, take a break for 10, then go back to it or try something new. Rather than saying, oh, hey, Emily, yeah, I studied 2 hours for my test yesterday, but you really only studied for 20 minutes, and then stared at your phone for the next few minutes that were left in that study session. So I feel like that's something that I have owned, and I've told other students, and they found it pretty effective, just because like it makes no sense to say you studied for 2 hours just to boast and brag, but you didn't gain that 2 hours worth of knowledge. So like, don't cheat yourself, be realistic with your goals, and I feel like that will make you feel more accomplished, and also it's making you stay true to yourself. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. I started doing that too. I'll even set a timer, because I know that like I'm gonna start. I like if it's even like if I can go past the timer. I mean, sometimes I'll go past the timer, but like I know if I go too far past, then once I take like it all gets messy. So I set a timer for 30 minutes. I work, I take a 10-minute break, and then I start working again. And it just like, and I just started doing that this semester. So it's taken.
Oh, cool. Yeah, definitely helpful. That's basically the Pomodoro method.
I learned that from you.
Oh, perfect. Oh yeah, I did that video I forgot about that. Well, I'm glad that it was helpful. Yeah, I think definitely during this time we have to know our limits, and really knowing the limits maybe sounds a little bit harsh, but it really goes with that idea of giving yourself a break sometimes and knowing what it is that you need. And Maxine knows that she needs to take those breaks every few minutes, and that is going to help her succeed in getting the things done. I think we very quickly have this ideal of, I have to finish this tonight because that's maybe what a student does, or that's what my friend did and they were fine. Which is very normal and understandable to think that way. But if you're really looking to get it done in an easy on you fashion, definitely going that method is good. So setting monthly goals. I think monthly goals are very common, at least for me. So the first thing you want to do is remember to find something that you can kind of record and plan these monthly goals with. It's important to do this with daily goals, but I think monthly goals are much easier to track because you can literally write in your calendar, like, I'm going to do it this day, this day, this day, and you can cross them off very easily. Plan your month using prompts. This is something that I actually recently came up on, and I thought it was very helpful. So planning your month with these prompts is great. So the first prompt is a focused goal. What goal are you focusing on this month? And you can fill in the answer. And then a well-being prompt. How will you make your mental and physical health a priority this month? And the happiness prompt is, what can you do this month to bring more happiness into your life? And the more of is, what do you need more of this month? And then less of is, what do you need less of this month? And this, I think, just makes monthly goals a lot easier to write because it's just, you're able to focus on these specific things that really keep the really most important things of the month at the top of your list. So make something that you can look at to inspire you. So this might be something, like a vision board or a doodle or something like that, something that maybe you can put on your wall or your door or even, in your purse or your binder or whatever it is that works for you, to look at it and not feel the dread of, oh, I have to get that done, but I get to do this. And that's why it's so important to make it really fun, and maybe if it's a paper, you're not going to write on this vision board, 250 words a day, but you might put icons that have to do with what you're writing about and ideas that you have that you can put in there. And choose a habit you'd like to start. This is a really great one for the month. I know mine would be, usually to drink more water. So, choosing a habit is good. And it's one of those things that's also very rewarding after the month to find out that you've really implemented this in your life. So starting a habit is often much easier and can be more rewarding than trying to end a habit. I thought that was very interesting to see, and kind of goes with that idea of the replacing quit with stop. It's just that idea of it's hard to stop one thing in its tracks and not ever do it again. Choose something like drinking sufficient water, eating enough vegetables, something that you can record and keep track of. So I have a couple more on setting monthly goals. Monthly goals are my favorite. So writing a monthly bucket list is kind of that same idea of the milestones that we talked about for long-term goals. So this bucket list is just something of, I want to get this, this, and this done. It might be like, I want to get this scholarship application done, or I want to, outline this paper by the end of the month or something like that. And reflecting on the month. And these are kind of similar to the prompts of, what went well? What did I prioritize? What am I proud of? What can I improve? And what am I grateful for? So the prompt that we talked about will be at the beginning of the month, and the reflection will be at the end. So it kind of gives you that moment to just really see how it went and how you can improve for the future. So Casey, I think you had something to say about monthly goals.
Yes. So in terms of the reflecting, I recently in the past semester, I got like a mindfulness journal, like a guided journal. And I'm not a journal person. Like I don't write really. I'm not like Maxine. I'm not a writer really. But I found it pretty effective that it was a guided journal. So they say like, oh, set 3 goals for today. and then you do a recap at the end of the day. And then for the month, they'll say, okay, about like look back at page one and see like what were your goals, and then see if you made any progress. So I found that pretty effective. And then actually writing it down made it so much more like meaningful and purposeful. So like I just found like a guided journal like really did help me. And so that's something that like I go on Amazon, find like a cheap one, and I just buy it and just go through it daily. And I found it really helped me. So as a writer, Maxine, that's probably something that could also help you since you are a writer. You probably need more pages since you probably express yourself a lot more than I do. But yeah, that's definitely something that I have used to try and like recap, like the reflection. Like that's my way of recapping that I did what I wanted to achieve, or if I didn't, then I move it to the next month.
Love that.
Yay.
Good.
Okay, so we're almost finished. So tips to achieving your goals. I am all about tips, and these ones definitely are things that I have utilized since I wrote this PowerPoint. So hopefully they helpful to you. So focus on what you can control and have a plan for the rest. So obviously, you control how much you study, or how much time you take to write the paper, but sometimes you can't control maybe what your teacher grades you on for the paper, or how strict they are with deadlines. But having a plan for those things, maybe having a plan on if you don't do well on the test that you have next. And actually there is a video on that I made, with kind of bouncing back after a bad grade. But you can just have a plan for that, and you can have plan A, plan B, plan C if you want to, if that makes you feel more comfortable. I know it makes me feel more comfortable to have those contingency plans.
Type
Go,
6.
go beyond immediate tasks and think of the big picture. So this kind of goes with, it really helps, at least for me, to zoom in and kind of zoom out, every once in a while during the month or the year, to really see how things are on that big scale, and then go to the granular level when it's independent things. So maybe the big picture might be, how am I doing this year? How is my family doing? How is my school doing? Kind of those big picture subjects. But then maybe if you want to zoom back down into those immediate tasks, you might say, how did I do on this class? How am I being with this person? How am I doing, on my sleep, or something like that. Get clarity on what goal achievement would look like. So this is something that you can do by yourself or with a professor, or a supervisor, whatever it may be. Really get clarity on what that goal achievement would look like. If it's if you're writing a dissertation or something like that, getting a chapter done in a month might be a very clear goal that is on that timeline. Whereas maybe just saying that you're going to get it done is not a clear goal. So schedule periodic check-ins. This is similar just to those reminders that we were talking about, of making sure that you're staying accountable, making sure that you didn't miss anything with those certain goals. Ask for support if you need it. That is a very big one. There's a reason why they say it takes a village for a lot of things, because it does. And it sometimes is hard, if you're starting a new school or starting a new program, or maybe you just don't have your normal friends in your classes. But you can always ask for help, whether it's with an academic success coach, with a professor, with a family member or another friend. Asking for that support sometimes even makes the goals a little bit richer, and you never know what resources you can tap into that will help, make it maybe a little bit easier, or make you be able to see things that you wouldn't have otherwise. Do a periodic comparison of your annual goals with your to-do list. So this again goes into maybe those daily reminders of what your long-term goals are, and making sure that what you're doing every day reflects what you want to get done, within, a few years. Making sure that you're not kind of losing track of some things that, are really important to you. and track your accomplishments. Again, a very similar idea, but I think in the wording of this, it's, it's very easy to track, oh, I didn't do this or I didn't get this done, but tracking your accomplishments kind of goes beyond that. It's being like, okay, I did this right, and also celebrating it and making sure that you're marking those opportunities and giving yourself that time to be like, wow, I did it. I did what I said I was going to do. I got it done, because you deserve it. If you took the time to get something done and you made the goal, set it, and stuck to it, you deserve to have that accomplished feeling. All right, so that is the end of the presentation. Do we have any ending questions or reflections?
I think everything that was discussed were really good tools. And I feel like everyone at some point in their life should like hear these things because it really does put some stuff into perspective for sure. Um, I'm lucky enough to I've used my resources at NSU like this far, so I have been exposed to a lot of these tools, but I know many students haven't. But I found it very effective. So I feel like it's something that will actually like transcend with me like to graduate school and like to real life. So like I'm really happy that you conducted this presentation, Emily, because it helps me, even if it reinforces what I already knew sometimes too. So I really appreciated this for sure.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like a very comprehensive and like tangible way to look at it. And it's so helpful. Like I wish I had something like this even when I was in high school, even when I was, or like it could definitely be something that like, I could see something like this being something that's like you can come back to, like a like Casey just said, like reconfirming or like reacquainting yourself with
Mm-hmm.
these ideas that maybe you don't always have them in the back of your head, or you get a little muddled or lost and frazzled and you're like, oh right, I can do it this way, like I forgot I have these tools. Like I think it's so important. Like this would be a great thing to like have in an orientation even.
True.
Emily, you're gonna do big things with this.
Oh, thank you so much.
But I truly, this is so helpful. And I really think that, more people, like it could be useful for so many people in so many different ways and settings. And I feel very lucky that I got, I got to have this like little, I don't know, like almost like coaching session just now.
Oh, here, real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.